Shalom, family. Hope all is well with you and yours. What a blessing it is to be here another day. All praises to the Most High. As always, let's get straight to it. Let's go ahead and look at Cameroon. Jews were not only in Cameroon, but they are in Cameroon, and they have been there for thousands of years. So I got this again from the website, Jews Were Here. Reading at the very top, it reads, there are some who believe that an ancient Jewish presence at one time existed in Cameroon via merchants who arrived from Egypt for trade. According to these accounts, the early communities in Cameroon observed rituals such as separation of dairy and meat products, as well as wearing Tefillin. There are also claims that the Jews migrated into Cameroon much later, after being forced southward due to the Islamic conquest of North Africa. So what is Tefillin? What is it? Tefillin is also known as phylacteries, are a pair of small black leather boxes that contain Torah verses and are worn by some Jewish people during prayer. One of the scriptures in Torah where they get the wearing of the Tefillin from is Deuteronomy 6:8, which reads, and you shall bind them for a sign upon your hand, and they shall be frontlets between your eyes. So I wanted to give you a quick description on what they mean by Tefillin. And notice that the Jews in Cameroon wore these phylacteries on their head, this box with the Torah inside the box, wore it on their heads as well. This had became tradition. So continuing on to where we left off, it reads, it is the oral tradition of the Bassa that they immigrated to Africa from Egypt thousands of years ago with Melech, their chief and one of the great grandsons of Judah, son of Jacob. So I want to just pause there. It reads that it's the oral tradition of the Bassa that they immigrated to Africa from Egypt thousands of years ago. The author needs to understand that Africa is a continent. Egypt is a nation that is on the continent of Africa, just like the United States. The United States is a nation that is on the continent of North America. They didn't leave Egypt and go into Africa. Their custom is that they traveled along the Nile River. They left Egypt and went into the nation of Cameroon. They traveled into Nigeria and then traveled into Cameroon. Continuing on, it reads, Melech led his family south along the Nile, then westward across Nigeria and eventually into Cameroon. Now, what's interesting about this is that this is another oral tradition of those Hebrews in Nigeria, specifically the Igbo, who has a similar oral tradition settling into Nigeria. The sons of Gad and their families came down, and eventually, of course, the other tribes would eventually migrate down as well, not only from the tribe of Gad, but from the other tribes as well. We looked at that before with Judah being right there in what we know today as Benin. If we drop down there, it says Rabbi Oriel claims that in 1920 there were 400,000 Israelites in Cameroon. But by 1962, the number had decreased to 167,000 due to the conversions of Christianity and Islam. He says that although these tribes have not been accepted halakhically, he believes that he can prove their Jewish status from medieval rabbinical sources. Okay, so we're going to move over to the website kulano.org. Let's grab another piece of evidence here. We always like to use more than one resource because, as we have said before, the Hebrews were already in Africa, right? Yahshua was on that continent that we know today as Africa, that we call Africa. They were there, and they are there still. So many were scattered to the four corners, but many fled as well in the land that we know as Africa. As we have looked at before, they would be scattered beyond the rivers of Ethiopia. Ethiopia is obviously where? It's obviously on that continent. Here, the Bassa and Cameroon. There were other tribes in Cameroon as well that identified as Yehuda. So we're looking specifically at the Bassa tribe right now. So now we're going to move over to Kalano.org. Again, these are also discussing those Hebrews in Cameroon. It reads, in February of 2014, Menachem Kukar, an emissary of Rabbi Shlomo Riskin, chief rabbi of Ifrat, Israel, joined me in Cameroon to examine the claims by some local tribes of their Jewish background. The visit was in response to an article written by Rabbi Oriel Ngumbas, a resident of Great Britain, on possible Jewish tribes in Cameroon. According to the article, Rabbi Oriel's grandmother was a Sabbath observer and lit candles on Friday evenings. When Oriel, who was raised in Cameroon, traveled to Europe for advanced academic studies, he discovered that these observances were Jewish in origin and decided to convert and became a rabbi. Look at that. It said he decided to convert. To convert to what? He was already doing the laws. He was already keeping Shabbat. I don't know what he was converting to. It goes on and reads, before I read Oriel's article, I had not given much credence to claims by local tribes of their Jewish origins. Then it goes on and it reads, and there were several, including the Bassa and the Ben Maliki and the Dula. I later heard about the Mabu in the southwest region of Cameroon. They're all over the place here in Cameroon. Okay, moving on. The article encouraged us to investigate the claims. What I did not know was the many local tribes, including my own Eton, had once observed rituals and customs similar to Jewish ones. The timeline of these observances put them before the arrival of the Christian missionaries who had discouraged them. So let's pause right here. One thing we want to remember is that Christian missionaries came in to these regions and came in and proselytized or converted the Israelites, those of Yasharel, into Christianity. This is a common thread that you see throughout the children of Yasharel scattered throughout the world. The Christian missionaries would come in, they would be converted. This is a fact, and this is well documented. And as a result, many Israelites lost their history. Now, some Christians would say, well, that's a good thing they came to Christ. Show me anywhere in the Bible where it says the Christians would go out and convert Israelites to Christianity and in turn would forget their history, forget the covenant they have with the Most High. Really, the only place it talks about that happening is in the Torah, where it tells us we would forget our covenant with the Most High. And obviously, the Messiah would never want us to lose our history. No matter what you hear, we have to remember that we are the people who were put here to be servants of the Most High, pointing the people back to Him, not the other way around. And of course, we are followers of the Messiah. One thing we have to remember, Yasharel, is that the Messiah is the Messiah of Yasharel. We have been looking for the Messiah since Genesis. But we need to remember that the Messiah, He Himself said, I came for the lost sheep of Yasharel. I came not but for the lost sheep of Yasharel. Now, we know that He would be the light to the Gentiles. That is written, okay? But the fact of the matter is we have to remember whose Messiah He is. We have to remember those in Jerusalem that had traveled there for Passover, and of course He would be crucified during this time as well, and laying out the palm branches, taking all the clothing, laying it on the ground, symbolizing the presence of the Messiah. As He rides over the garments, rides over the palm branches. Save us. King of who? Talking about the King of Yasharel. This was the main piece of evidence for Him to be crucified, was that they claimed that He claimed to be the King, which we know He is. But we understand the order of things. We understand from Genesis to Revelation. It doesn't start in the New Testament. The word starts in Genesis. Then it goes to Revelation. So this was a work that was done to the people all throughout. And really the ultimate goal, it seems, was for the children of Yasharel to forget who they are. All throughout these regions that the Hebrews had went to. Okay, let's continue on. Moving on. This is Rabbi Oriel's testimony, going on and reading. I can remember my own childhood when we did not eat animals that are forbidden by the Bible. And we practiced circumcision, definitely not a Christian custom. We also practice halitza, which demands that the brother take the wife of the deceased brother or relative to ensure a child is born to the widow and the husband's name is not lost or forgotten. The custom is no longer practiced. Now remember, the custom is no longer practiced, of course, because many of them have been converted over into Christianity. And we've seen that on the website, Jews Were Here. Okay, as we continue reading, Menachem had just studied and returned from Spain and Portugal, where he was studying the immigration patterns of Jews after 1391, especially to Africa. He offered to accompany me to visit some of these tribes. In the end, we visited the Bamileke and the Bassa. I was unable to make arrangements with the other tribes during his visit. The name Bassa or Bassa in the Bantu language means conquerors. According to Frederick, Bassa tribesmen are taught that they are Jews. As in many parts of the world, tribal leaders are keepers of all traditions and history, which they impart through an oral tradition. Frederick is one of his tribe's leaders. According to Frederick, the Bassa immigrated from Africa to Egypt thousands of years ago with Melech. Now, we read this already before, so I don't need to read it again. Now watch this. The Bassa called God Eloma, the God of creation. Here we find them using Hebrew, the Elohim, right there, Elohim, which we know in Hebrew the name for God is Eloah or Elohim. Now we know some of us use different pronunciations for the Hebrew word God. Before you guys jump in the comments, what we are doing here is learning about those who are scattered. We're looking at the Bassa. We're looking at those in Cameroon. This is what they are speaking. And their pronunciation for God is Elohim. It should be beautiful to see our people still having some recollection of their language. So you can always know the people by looking at the customs. How long have they been keeping these customs? What customs are they keeping? Are they keeping the customs, the laws, statutes, and commandments, for example? Really, that is a strong indicator that the people truly are Yasharel. Let's look at some of these customs of the Bassa. It reads, throughout the centuries, the hill Nagok Latuba was served as the holiest place for the Bassa people, the place where they used to gather once a year to perform sacrifices. They did this for years until German priests arrived in Cameroon in 1845 and forbade the practices. Rites and customs of the Bassa circumcision. Whenever possible, circumcision was performed on the 8th day after the birth of a son and was considered a festive event. We can find this in Leviticus in the 12th chapter, 3rd verse, and Exodus 12th chapter, 48th verse, where newborn males are circumcised on the 8th day. Family purity laws. When a woman was in her menstrual period, she isolated herself for 8 days. During this period, she would not have intercourse with her husband and was not allowed to cook food for her family or do any kind of work in the house. After 8 days, she performed purification and resumed her normal life. We find this in Torah, Leviticus 15:19, where the woman is unclean for 7 days and is unclean until evening, which is the beginning of the new day. The Bassa did not eat the animals forbidden in the Bible. They did not eat blood. And when they slaughtered an animal, they would dig a hole and let the blood flow into it, and then they would cover it over. Leviticus 7:26 tells us that we should not eat any blood whatsoever. Purification. Anyone who attended a funeral had to perform purification. Men had to perform purification after any sexual intercourse. Purification consisted of washing oneself with a plant called hyssop, then immersing oneself in a river. It could only be one activity or both. We can find laws on cleansing in the book of Numbers, 19th chapter. Holidays. The most important Bassa holiday was the Gansa festival, the festival of purification, celebrated at the foot of Nagok Litabu Hill, which took place once a year, sometime in between the 9th and 11th month. People came from all the villages and brought animal sacrifices. Other holidays included new moon festivals and harvest festivals. The priests were the guardians of the tribal tradition and ruled over the society. They played many roles. Some judges, others performed rituals. Marriages were arranged between families. The dowry brought by the man's family had to include 70 items. A man who could not afford a dowry would work for the wife's family for an agreed period of time, after which he received his wife. We see in the account of Jacob where he served under Laban for 14 years for Leah and Rachel. The Bassa did not give their daughters to other tribes that they called uncircumcised. The only tribe they allowed their daughter to marry was the Etan tribe that they believed descended from a brother of one of their ancestors. In this person's conclusion, he says, The above descriptions are abbreviated, but demonstrate some of the similarities to Jewish customs and rituals. The above descriptions are abbreviated, but demonstrate some similarities to Jewish customs and rituals. This does not demonstrate similarities. These are Hebrew customs. These are Yasharol customs. These are not similarities. Okay? These are not similarities. Number one, they are giving you the oral tradition of where they came from, saying that they came from that land, how they migrated down, how they've been keeping the laws, the statutes, the commandments. These are not similarities, but what they are pieces of evidence, sir. You know, everybody else can do whatever they want to do, right? They can not give us evidence. They can say that they are who they are. And, you know, when there's pushback, there's a problem. But when we give you the evidence, we give you the historical customs, we show you factual, archaeological, written, oral. Now there's a problem. There's an issue. There's similarities. I mean, this is blatant disregard and denial of the people of the book. But we know what it is. We know that the word says that we would be scattered throughout the world and that the other nations would deplore us. The other nations would treat us less than, was part of the curse. And so this is what they don't take into account. They do not take into the account of the curse. They say, well, you guys are cursed, but what curse? Just say the curse that it is. And the curse that it is, we know, is the curse of Deuteronomy 28. Yes, Deuteronomy 28. You know, many people try to run away from that. Well, you can't use Deuteronomy 28. What are you talking about? We can't use Deuteronomy 28. Is it because you have never experienced Deuteronomy 28? Is that the reason why you want to just throw it out? It's like throwing the biggest piece of evidence that you have and saying, no, you cannot bring that into it. That's irrelevant. Do you see how absurd this thinking is? And why this is important that we focus on what the Most High is doing and not focus on the outward things that's going on. Because if you're waiting for acceptance from other people about who you are, you're going to be waiting for a long time. In the meantime, we continue to serve Him. We get back to doing what He has intended from the beginning. That time is now. The word tells us that we would be scattered. We would stop doing the law, statutes, commandments. We see in the days of the King Josiah how the children of Judah, the Yehudi, have forgot that there even was a law. We see that right there in the word. And then, of course, He says that we would be scattered and we will forget who He is. Then He will remember us. And then, of course, that relationship will be restored. This whole thing about the similarities and this not being exactly what the law says and how the law says that you should worship Him and keep the law. You do understand that that's why the Israelites and the children of Judah were scattered. We were scattered. But praise Yah, we are now being gathered. If you got something out of this channel, don't forget to subscribe, like, share, comment in the comment section below. It helps to grow the channel. Thank you, and may the Most High bless you.